Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Poetry Thursday, a scrappy little BookTube tradition in which a few of us read you a poem on Thursday, and one of us natters on about it. I won't be doing much nattering today because I am working solely in one anthology for the foreseeable future for Poetry Thursday. This thing, 20th Century American Poetry. And this is set up chronologically, and I'm just reading it from front to back. I'm going through it. I'm not reading every poem, but I'm touching on every poet. And when you do this, when you take an approach like this, you're going to hit, if the editors are any good, a whole bunch of poets that aren't familiar to you, a whole bunch that are a lot less familiar to you, and occasionally you're going to hit a star. In any anthology like this, it can't help but happen. And it's happening to us today for the very first time, because we are up to the 1920s, and we are hitting Robert Frost, who is a star. He is one of the great American poets, one of the ones that if you wrang this thing dry, only a handful of names would pop out, and his would be one of them. There's no real reason for me to go on at great length and natter on here, because you're going to be familiar with this guy's poetry no matter what I pick, and you've probably been frog marched through some of it at school to know what you're getting and what it means and how to talk about it and whatnot. This is a poet some of whose taglines are so well known that people forget that he's the one who wrote them. It's just that level of fame. So I thought we'd read one of those. It's not much of a voyage of discovery here. If I had a seminar with you, if you were coming for an hour once a week for 5 months, we could do a lot with Robert Frost, because, as is true with so many writers who have become just iconic, they're usually doing a lot more than you think. The iconic transformation comes because they've done a few things that everybody knows. And usually they come to hate those things as much as anybody, because they know that they're more interesting than that. That's definitely true with Frost. But it doesn't matter. We'll dip in. He'll just be a very typical Poetry Thursday entry. Most of my Poetry Thursday entries are not typical. His will just be a very typical one, because it's impossible not to do a Poetry Thursday with Robert Frost that isn't typical. But still worthwhile, not bad thing for you to tune in to a BookTube channel on a random Thursday and hear a Robert Frost poem. We will do one of his most famous ones that's been set to music many, many times, Stopping by Woods on Snowy Evening. This is from 1923. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his little harness bell a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sound's the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. A very, very famous poem that was a favorite of John F. Kennedy, among many others, among many other famous people, among many other writers. Frost is a favorite. He has that particular quality that's given to some poets, to say things that feel so automatically eternal that they're no trouble to remember, and you start, like I said, you start to divorce them from the poet. They start to feel like things that have always been here. Every once in a while, a poet will manage that. That's not PR. That is some alchemy of their writing talent. I don't understand that alchemy, but I was just reading yesterday an essay by the late Martin Amis on the poet Philip Larkin, where he says the exact same thing, where he says that is Larkin as well. And I was reading his descriptions of the memorability of Larkin, the instantaneous memorability, how this is a thing, here's a poet who is saying something that I have had inside me all this time. And now I know what that something sounds like. I don't know if I'm doing a good job of describing it, but it's, I was reading those sentiments in a collection of nonfiction that I'm reading from Martin Amis. He mentions Larkin a lot. And he often mentions that quality. And I was reading it and I was thinking, oh, At first I was thinking, well, that's just hooey. All you mean is that you're really familiar with this guy's poetry, but these poems didn't strike you that way when you first read them. But then I thought, no, you locked horns with this guy for his whole career. But you never saw him lie. Not about books, not about reading. So I believe it. And the minute I believed it, I suddenly realized, oh, wait, not only should I believe this, but it's true. For my generation, that was Robert Frost. That exact same thing, that instant memorability, that instant applicability in a poem that absolutely does not exist anymore. 25 years after Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening came out, poetry changed forever and stopped being able to do that. It absolutely does not do that anymore, except by accident. And no poet is known for that anymore. But it was still happening here, and it's the signature quality of Frost, I think, is that, you know, whether it's some say the world will die by fire, some say by ice, whether it's, you know, good fences make good neighbors, whatever, no matter what it is, there'll be a Frost thing that you just know. The path not taken. How many people use that phrase every day and don't have any idea that Robert Frost wrote a poem? But and I'm not saying that I don't like him. I don't think I would have liked the man at all. But his poetry I really like. But in Poetry Thursday, there's no point in it. I mean, if we're going through this book, poet by poet, we're definitely going to encounter poets like this, but no reason to dwell. So we'll get this done in under 10 minutes instead of a 30-minute. And I'll wrap this up. We'll be back next Thursday. I'm not looking ahead. We'll see who we find. One Robert Frost poem is enough, though. If you haven't read Frost, read Frost. That's pretty easy. So I'll wrap this up, and I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.